Is this on? Yeah. Hello, hello. Yep. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to PCE. So I'm John Hardwick. We're going to get started now. So we'll go quickly first through the usual administrative notices, and we'll talk about working group status. Then we have several drafts on the agenda, both working group drafts and new drafts for us to discuss. Let's begin with a note well. Hopefully everyone has familiarized themselves with the Noel before, but in case not, please do read this if you're considering participating during the meeting. It covers your rights and responsibilities as an IETF participant. I've passed around the blue sheets. Please sign the blue sheets with your name. We have a minute taker. Drew's going to take the minutes. Do we have anyone here who could be a Jabber scribe? Any volunteers? Anyone on Jabber? All right. So I'm also logged into Jabber. Drew's logged into Jabber. If anyone types a question into Jabber, surely one of us will see that. So as usual, this meeting is not just in this room. We are streaming live and direct to the internet. We have some participants on Meet Echo, some of whom are not even here. So when you are speaking, please speak only using the microphone. Please state your name before you speak for the benefit of a minute taker and anyone listening in. If you're presenting, please try to not to stray from outside this pink box on the floor so that the cameras can continue to see you. Just to note, my co-chair, Julien, unfortunately isn't here. He had to stay in France. I think we're all still celebrating the World Cup. But Julien is here in spirit, if not in body, because he's on the Meet Echo, so he will be listening to what happens. The usual reminder to use the mailing list. Sometimes the mailing list goes quiet. Sometimes things happen to drafts which, in hindsight, we couldn't understand because nothing got discussed on the list beforehand. So please use the list. Raise any issues, ask any questions. That's what it's there for. If you're unsure about anything or you need to clear anything up, then please use the list, and that would be great. Thanks. Here's our agenda. I believe everyone who wanted a slot this time has managed to get a slot, so that should be good. Does anyone want to bash our agenda? I think that's a no. Okay, so I'll move on to the status of our working group drafts. So we'll start with those that have actually moved beyond the working group. So sadly, no new RFC since London, but we are making some good progress. We have one sitting in the RFC editor queue. This is for the LSP setup type generalization. This is a prerequisite for segment routing. We had quite a few issues raised by the IESG during last call, and we had to address quite a few of those. But we finally got that done. Now we are just sitting in Auth 48, where authors have 48 hours to respond to the RFC editor. I think we're still about 3 weeks into that process now. 3 authors have replied, 2 authors have not. So it would be marvelous if those 2 authors could please reply, and then we can move that one forward. Besides that, we have early code point allocations for the stateful PCE point to multipoint draft, and also for the segment routing draft. More on that in just a second. Some errata were raised for some of our already published RFCs. I think these all amounted to editorial clarifications. All of the errata were accepted. On our base PCEP RFC 5440, we updated a reference. In RFC 8231, we corrected a typo there, and we corrected a typo in 8233 as well. Drafts still in the working group. Quite a few are past working group last call and are sort of waiting for the next step. So we have 3 there where working group last call's finished, and they are pending an update. There's inter-area AS applicability, GMPLS PCEP extensions, and actually, I think the third bullet there, WSON RWA extension, that's not waiting for an update. That's actually waiting for the GMPLS PCEP extensions updates to be done. Does anyone here want to talk about either inter-area AS applicability or GMPLS PCEP extensions? Daniel.
Hello, yes, Daniel King. So first, kind of a mea culpa, I think, for inter-area AS applicability, because it's I think years now since you might have done a review. It feels like very long time actually, but there were a number of good comments, and we didn't actually update the documents. It's at least a year, I think. I'm wondering, is the document even useful anymore now that DetNet's going to solve all sort of internet connectivity problems? That aside, could we get some kind of survey from the room to see if the authors should update the document? Because it was you had a significant
I
number
think
of comments.
there were significant editorial comments in terms of improving the document as a document, and I think that the major problem was because it was such a venerable document, it didn't include anything on stateful PCE, and I think
exactly,
the question is this a useful document to write, and should we because it's going to take some work to do those editorial changes and to add a stateful PCE, which I think we probably should do.
Exactly, and I'm not.
Who wants to proceed?
Although I am inherently lazy. Yes, that's where I was trying to get to. I don't mind taking the lead and then having the co-authors review and see if I can delegate some of those new sections. It's just a significant task, and I just want to know if it's really worthwhile and if it's going to be a useful document.
So, if you're here in the room, please could you raise your hands if you think it is worthwhile to have a document discussing the applicability of PCE to inter-area or inter-AS routing. So, I counted 4. I counted 4. So I think that there is non-negligible interest. I wouldn't say there's an overwhelming avalanche of people clamoring for it to go ahead.
At least there is interest. I think that's good enough for me.
At least there is some interest. It sounds like if work was done, then some people would care. And
at least someone will read it. And now I know who's going to review the next version. So I can take that and move forward.
Yeah.
Cool.
Deborah, and if I can remind you all, this was a milestone on your charter in 2013.
Do we need AD approval to drop milestones from the charter? That's just for adding, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but let's figure that out if we need to. Right. Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm the author of WSUN RWA extension, waiting for GMPLS PSAB extensions Shepherd review. Thanks to Julian, he provided Shepherd review comment to Cyril. And I talked to Cyril, and he said he has time to update, but I haven't seen any update. But if he doesn't have time, I might help him to reply to Julian's comment. But I have another question: is WSUN RWA and also Staple PC GMPLS? Can you make Shepherd review, being progress in parallel instead of just waiting for the previous one to be completed, because it takes some effort, right?
Yes, and I think we have done that for WSUN RWA because Daniele did a Shepherd review of that already. So I think
it's done. Okay.
Yeah, it's already done. The changes are already made.
Oh, okay. It was you. Okay, now I'm sorry. I was completely forgotten about that because it's been a while.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So we should chase Cyril to get those updates made. So we have a queue for working group last call, and now here's my mea culpa for not having last called more of them in the last period. I'm sorry about that. We are a little bit struggling for bandwidth for shepherds. So if anyone out there is interested in being a shepherd, then please talk to me offline. I'd be very grateful for the help if you could just devote a few hours to reviewing one of these drafts and then helping it through the ISG process. That would help us clear the queue a lot faster than it's currently being queued. In the meantime, that's the queue for last call is a hierarchy extension, stateful PCE, auto bandwidth, stateful PCE point to multipoint, ACTN applicability, stateful PCE GMPLS, stateful hierarchical PCE. That's basically the order I expect to do them in. So assuming I have shepherds available, and I can shepherd some of those, I can't do them all, then we'll aim to last call them all in that order. And I would hope that we would do that before we go to Thailand in November. Okay, so working group drafts not on the agenda for this time. Does anyone in the room have anything to say about these? Any authors want to give us a quick status update, or shall we just assume that they are static?
Hi, Dhruv from Huawei. So let me pick a few. PCEP Yang, we did the update recently, added more examples, cleared some ID nits, made sure that some examples have IPv6 and other things that usually blocks us. I think now would be the good time for Yang Doctor review, especially when the TE topology and those things are moving along. So it would be really good if the chairs can request for Yang Doctor review.
Agreed.
Okay. Apart from that, I think the rest that I'm editor of are moving pretty well. I don't see any open issues listed on the list or by offline by anyone in the working group. So if you care about these documents, please read, please comment, find me or any other authors for LSP control, for flow spec, for enhanced errors anyway, Huaimon will cover. LSP scheduling, etc. Associations, I will anyway talk about in the next session.
Okay.
Huawei. Regarding the draft about the enhanced errors, actually, we did receive some comments offline, and I have to work only by myself because I failed to connect with other co-authors because the draft has been quite a long time, and my understanding is after my next update after this meeting, I think the draft will be ready for the last call.
Okay, thanks.
It's Adrian Farrell. The flow spec work is rumbling along quite nicely. We're sort of pushing the implementation side of it now. The only thing that's really sticking in my head is to what extent this should harmonize with the SRT policy work, because they are, in a sense, similar, describing what traffic should go on what path. I'd like opinions.
Thanks, Adrian. I think that question was asked last time as well. I haven't yet got an opinion on that personally, but if there are any SRTE authors in the room, then please step forward and give us your opinion. Otherwise, I think we need to look at that as the draft progresses. Okay, so 2 documents are expired, but we already covered them. They're just waiting for updates. And that's the working group status done. Any questions or comments? Okay. So the first presenter will be Drew.
Hello, I'm Dhruv. I'll be talking about all the set of documents that we have regarding the PCEP association. And let's go. This is our association landscape. You have the base association group draft, which describes the association object. And then we have these bunch of other documents that creates different types of associations. On the left, you have 4 working group documents dealing with diversity, policy, protection, and bidirectional association. You have some other individual documents which are currently on agenda separately. So I'll not go in depth for that. They have time on the agenda, which is the VN association and the bidirectional association for SRTE. Apart from that, there are some individual IDs still dealing with resource sharing and make before break, as well as a new document published for segment routing, how the candidate paths can be associated into an SRTE policy. So this is just a 0.0 version recently posted. It's right now not on the agenda separately. So this is where we are. So as you can see, there are a bunch of documents dealing with association. With the base association, we already did working group last call. There was one substantial comment pending from Cyril, which is regarding adding the capability advertisement for various associations that are supported. We kind of discussed that how to handle it in a backward compatible way for the things which are already deployed versus something that could be useful for various different associations that are being described anyway. So we came up with this approach that we will have association type list, similar to how we do OF list in an open message. That way you can advertise that these are the type of associations that I support. But we kind of made this as an optional thing. And each association type document would mandate or decide that for this type, for example, the policy can say that for policy you must do discovery, and it should be there in the open message before use, but some other ones could make it optional. So it could be decided by the each individual ID how to handle the association discovery part. So basically, this was the only thing pending. I think now we are ready for the next step. And anyway, we discussed that that's what the chairs wants to do as well. Now, the requirements for any of the documents that specify a new association type, they need to clearly state whether they think that the advertisement during open message should be mandatory or not. So that's a requirement on them. And also, if you remember, in the association draft, we have two types, whether it is dynamic association or operator configured association, or an association type that could be both. So this is a requirement that any association should clearly state that what type they belong to, and if there is especially the issue of association range handling, that needs to be clearly stated. So this is that's why I'm covering them together, so that anybody who is thinking of this work, please do take care of these things as well in your document. So let's go through the updates that we have done to the working group documents. The updates have been pretty small because most of the contents have been stable. Main changes have been because of the recent change in the association group draft. So for diversity, we kind of made the capability advertisement as mandatory. This one is clearly stated as both dynamic and operator configured. What that means is that this diversity association can be created dynamically by a PSEP speaker based on some configuration on the tunnel, for instance, or it could also be operator configured, especially in cases where you have the two LSPs starting from a different head nodes, and it is explicitly configured by operator that these two LSPs needs to be diverse from each other, and other smaller changes. So that was all about diversity. With respect to policy, same changes again, capability advertisement and a clear description about policy is always an operator configured association. Next, for path protection, this was recently adopted after the last IETF. So here also we made two updates. One is capability advertisement, mentioning that this is dynamic, and one requirement that came in that to clearly state what is the protection type. So for this thing, we added a protection type field, and the handling is as per RFC 4872. So same bits and same description as described in 4872 has been added. So now you can tell what type of protection is this when you create this association. Regarding bidirectional draft, Rakesh made the update, and he added some more descriptions based on whatever feedback that he got during the working group adoption call, and which dealt with adding more figures and descriptions, especially because he describes two type of initiation mechanism, whether it is a single-sided bidirectional association and double-sided bidirectional association. So he has added those descriptions and some error handling. So that covers the status of all the working group documents. Now, some other documents, I just wanted to give an update to the working group that what people are working on. So please give comments to these on the list. And later we can think about how to get them adopted as well. So one is resource sharing. Currently, there's no update to this document, but I think an update should be coming based on whatever we discussed regarding making the how to handle the capability advertisement and other things as well. There is a document, this is pretty old, about explicit make before break and an association object. Earlier, this was being done in a non-association way, so the authors had changed and used an association type and that mechanism to do explicit make before break. And apart from that, there has not been any big change, but I think the document is technically up to date and it's fine. The last one is the new document. This document describes that if a SRTE policy has been created and you have a set of candidate paths, how do you associate those candidate paths into an SRTE policy? So good that we got some comments on this yesterday on the mailing list. So we will be working with the authors and trying to resolve this pretty soon and come up with a new version as well. Okay, so I think the main thing is, that we have to do is get the association group document out of the way, and that's already happening, which is good. And then we can decide the order in which we want to handle each of the various association types document in the working group. So please review, and especially for all the other association types, we need to make sure that all the changes that we make in are aligned to each other, because these all documents are very closely related to each other. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Drew. The next speaker is Young.
Here, I'd like to give the status, the update on three drafts, hierarchical PCE and stateful hierarchical PCE, and applicability of PCE to ICTN. So I'm not the author of PCE hierarchy, but I think Drew took the action to update this document. And I believe Drew is not also the author, but he basically up to date to align with other progress, especially since 101 IETF meeting. He updated to include domain diversity requirement to indicate what is the domain ID for exiting domain and so on. And this update include right references and correcting some reference and section numbers, and just to make it ready for working group last call. So I think the authors believe this is ready for working group last call.
Yes, in the queue.
Okay. So next one is we apply stateful PCE to hierarchy. This was presented in 101, and we basically update how reoptimization is handled and clarify PLSP ID and speaker identity TLD using report message from child to parents, basically to be aligned with other draft mentioned here. And also this one is also ready for the working group last call. That's in the queue, right?
It's in the queue too.
Okay.
Queue is long.
Okay, the queue is long. Okay, so I don't have to go through. Yeah. And PC applicability ACTN, also presented last IETF, basically aligned with ACTN framework, which now is RFC queue. During IESG reviews, there are some changes, so we try to align with that. And we actually think that this is also working group last call ready.
It's also in the queue.
Okay.
We need
then,
shepherds.
Okay,
Yeah.
then yeah, this is a recap. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, so the next section is to discuss some new work on PC as central controller. Drew, are you doing this? Okay.
Hi, this is Dhruv again, and we'll be talking about PCCC extensions. So these documents have been around for a while, but they have gone through a major update this time. So that's why I've asked the chairs for a little longer time to go over these documents a little bit more in detail. So a little bit history. We already have RFC 8283 published. So we have the PC as a central controller architecture and framework published. This describes the motivation, the applicability of both PC as a controller and a PCEP as an interface between the controller and a node, and all the different processing, what kind of applicability, what kind of scalability and other considerations that we need to take if we use PC as a central controller and update PCEP protocol for this purpose. And during the last discussion in the meeting, we had the agreement within the working group that yes, we are going in this direction anyways, and let's get on with the actual protocol work and the solution work, and that's what I'm here for. Okay, so let's have a quick description. So basically, we have two documents. The first document describes what we call as a basic mode, and the other documents talks about the segment routing. But both documents are quite well aligned. They use the same extension and the same objects and same mechanisms as much as possible. In the basic mode, as described in the RFC, this mode is nothing but a static LSP configuration. You have a controller. He calculates the path. Once the path calculation is done, along the path, he instructs the node to take forwarding actions. So what we call these forwarding actions are nothing but central controller instructions. And we have kept the name a little bit generic for the reason that this central controller instructions could be mean to do multiple things. For example, in this case, is just an MPLS label download. It could also be SR-SID, SR-V6. So multiple things are happening. So keeping it generic as a central controller instructions is quite useful. But in this mode, we have described about MPLS label only. So once the LSP, once the labels are provisioned along the path, it's same. You have for this LSP, this is your out label, this is the in label on the transit node, and this is your out label, this is your next hop. All that information will be pushed from the controller right to the device, just like any other SBI, SDN, SBI kind of protocol. This will change things, that you have a PCEP session across all the nodes along the path, and you are using that session to download information. So that's basically what PCCC is. It's not rocket science, it's pretty straightforward. So how do we do this via PCEP? First thing that we need is we need a new path setup type. The good that we have that already. We will define a new path setup type that this will be PCCC. So you get, let's start, an ingress sends a report message, says that this is a PCCC LSP, and I'm delegating it to you, handle it. So PC will calculate the path, but once the path is calculated, along the nodes of the path, it must send the controller instructions. In the older version of this document, we were thinking of creating new messages, but we got the feedback, we listened to the feedback, and we kind of think that it is actually nothing but an initiate message, but with a new object, which is the CCID, which is the central controller instruction. So you identify that for this particular LSP, I am downloading this instruction on this device. And of course, we start with egress, then transit, then ingress, all the labels are downloaded along. So this central controller instruction could include just the out label, in label and out label, just the in label, any combination is possible, and that would be supported and identified by a unique ID. Once the labels are all downloaded, we update to the ingress. Oh, by the way, your LSP is up, labels are downloaded, you can start sending the traffic. Pretty straightforward. So that's what's happening. So your basic report update message from Ingress, they don't change much. They remain the same. Only thing is they have a path setup type that clearly tell that the setup type is PCECC. The other thing that would be changing is these initiate message going through all the nodes along the path and downloading whatever is the label instructions that is needed. For PC initiate, not much changes again. The only difference would be that when you initiate to the PCE, that I intend to create a PCCC LSP and get the LSP ID and other things from it. The main reason that we are doing that is so that we can get those identifiers, because we want to put the same identifiers later on when we are downloading the instructions. This is only done for manageability reasons, so that we can equate, oh, this central instructions was actually done for this particular LSP. So that helps us with figuring things out. Rest of the things kind of remains the same, and you have the R flag for cleanup if you want to ever remove it. Is it a clarification question?
Yes.
Or? Okay, go ahead.
Igor Bruskin, Huawei. The instructions were sent sequentially or in parallel?
Yeah, parallel.
So how the controller synchronized? Basically, it waits from the slowest?
Usually, it's up to you, but the one that we usually follow is start from the end towards the front. And then good thing is we have report messages anyway to clearly say that, oh, I have a feedback, an acknowledgement coming from all the devices that yes, the labels have been downloaded. So I am pretty sure that I can now send the traffic.
And what if some of them report error and others report success?
I will recompute.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Andrew Stone from Nokia. The PLSP ID being associated to the transit, is that an optional characteristic of this, or is it a mandatory characteristic?
Right now, it's mandatory.
So in the case of PCECC, obviously it's a generic for any type of labeling that you want to use. But if you're using with SRTE, it kind of defeats the purpose of using it with SRTE.
And that's why I will talk about this a little later. And that will be this is the basic mode. When I have the SR mode, so that's why the CCI object, we kept it generic, and LSP is mandatory only in this mode. Okay, clear. So now let's talk about what if I need to make a change into my LSP. What will be my make before break procedure in this mode? Well, because you are changing the path, you must have new set of labels for that path. You first do that operation. Go ahead and download new set of labels along the path, whether it's the same nodes or different nodes, doesn't matter. But you do this operation first. Once that operation is over, you send an update message to the ingress asking him, oh, by the way, now you have a new path. So we will still tell him the path. He will not do anything with it. That ERO, he will it's only for his information. He doesn't have to do anything. The labels are anyway downloaded. All he has to do is switch the traffic to whatever is the new label, new out label that he has at the ingress. So once he has done that and we have a report message that yes, everything is fine, then we can go about deleting all the old labels that we had along the path. Pretty standard procedure. Nothing majorly new here as well, but we will do make before break procedure, especially for this mode. And because you would need new set of labels, you need to make sure that those labels are downloaded. Then you move the traffic on the new path and then go about deleting the labels from before.
Sorry, can I have another clarification question? What exactly you're making in this case? So basically, is it just a detour, or it's the new path end to end? If you
New path.
Huh?
New path.
The entire path.
Entire path.
So why do you need the entire path? You need it for RSVP because in RSVP you can do only end-to-end signaling, right? But in this case, you just can do the detour and then just swap the detour with
yes. Basically, we will not differentiate them. For us, it's a path modification. Now, in this path modification, if there is a cases that I don't have to change all the labels and I only have to change a few, yeah, it's allowed. Doesn't matter. The procedure will remain the same.
Right. So it's path modification. It's not, but it's not make before break. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, we'll talk about the terminology part. I know this works. Let's fix the terminology in the document. I'll discuss with you. Okay, moving on. Now we'll come to the segment routing part. So what is happening in segment routing is that we are using, we already have PC for segment routing where the label stack can be calculated by PCE and pushed to the ingress. So what's new here? The new part is even the SR SID assignment can also be done by the controller. And this is also discussed in the RFC in the TEAS working group. So basically the SID allocation can be done by PCE and pushed to all the nodes in the network or the nodes that actually needs it in whichever way that can be figured out by the PCE-CC. So what must happen, that there must be some label space clearly allocated to PCE. So the PCE will make this allocation. So that needs to be done. And then from that, the node SID or prefix SID or adjacency SID can be allocated by PCE and pushed onto the device. The rest of the procedure to talking to the ingress doesn't change. You just prepare the label stack, give it to the ingress, and the rest of the segment routing works without any change. There would be a few things that we need to take care. Things like identifying clearly what the node is. So for that purpose, a PCEP speaker, currently in PCEP, we simply use whatever is the TCP IP address to figure out how do we reach the PCC or identify a PCC. So we wanted to make that very clear that it should be better if the node ID used in traffic engineering is advertised at the time when the session is getting formed from a PCE, so that I can map them very clearly. So that's something that we have added in the document as well. So what happens and what are the new things that you need? First, no LSP in this case. We have a new object which we call FEC, which kind of describe basically what is this central SR CCID belongs to. So in this case, since it's about downloading node information, your FEC points to the node ID and all the details related to that. So basically think of this as a simple node distribution via IGP. Things remains exactly the same. Only difference is it is the PCE that's allocating the SID and talking to all the nodes and downloading that information. But what should be actually downloaded onto the device? That's still done by the node, especially then how to figure out what the next hop should be. That depends on the IGP information running in your node, and based on just the SID and the FEC is coming from the controller. Clarification?
Yeah, just Andrew from Nokia, just a clarification for the previous slide about doing the correlation of the TCP session to the router ID. That's being embedded in this draft. Would it make sense to export that into its own standalone draft? So that way for all PCEP integration, you can correlate the PCEP session to what's been advertised into the TED?
We can talk about it. Okay. Now for adjacency, not much change here. Only difference is you have a different FEC, which kind of identifies both the endpoints of that adjacency, but rest of the procedure kind of remains the same. And then, okay, let's move on. So these are some of the common procedures, irrespective of whether we do basic mode or SR. We need to worry about what if PC goes down, what if there's a session down, how do I handle this, when would I clean up the instructions that I've received from PCE. Most of the things we are piggybacking on the mechanism that we have for LSP anyway. So not much difference whether it is an LSP cleanup or it is a CC central controller instructions cleanup. We rely on the same procedure that we already put in our stateful PCE drafts. So using an initiate message instead of putting a new message also helped us with this procedure quite a bit, that now we can piggyback on the state timeout interval, on all the procedures that we already have clearly listed out in RFC 8231. And we don't differentiate too much, whether it is SR LSP or RSVP LSP. The way we clean up LSP state on the device, it's the same way we can clean up the central control instructions. Now, we also need to worry about the delegation procedure a little bit. That is, if the PCE that sends us this instruction, if that PCE is no longer there, what do we do with this? Is there a way, as the LSP gets redelegated to a new PCE, the central controller instructions which were used for that LSP also needs to move along with that. So in the document, we have kind of explained the procedure for that. This is, yeah.
Excuse me, Hao Mian Huawei. Actually, I didn't review very carefully on this kind of redelegation part, but I would like to extend a little bit because PCE is actually covers a larger scope than the RSVP, as it has its own range of nodes and corresponding RSPs. So I'm wondering, besides the case that one PCE comes shut down or other kind of failure stuff, is it possible to also consider the overloading of one single PCE, and so that some of the RSPs or node can come over to another PCE's domain? Have you already covered that? Or
No, I think we have covered what we do it for normal stateful LSPs. So
Okay.
I think there is an overload mechanism even in 8231. So we are piggybacking on that. We are not describing anything new, but we can discuss if there is a need for something new to be added.
okay,
I can discuss.
Igor Briskin, just one more comment. When failure happens on the network, sometimes it requires to reroute numerous LSPs, right? So the vertical signaling, the way you described, could in theory take advantage by reprovisioning multiple LSPs at the same time by combining the instructions sent to the same node with respect to all LSPs. Have you considered that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Good thing is initiate message allows you to club a lot of things together, so we can definitely do that. So next is the synchronization part. So if our session temporarily goes down, what will we do? Again, LSP state synchronization mechanism helps us quite well here. We don't differentiate too much. These are just CCI. When the session comes up during the LSP-DB synchronization state, we also synchronize all the central controller instructions that we have received. The difference would be that in case of LSP, it is the PCC that sends all the LSPs that it has, and the PCE takes the action. In this case also, we want to do the same thing. We say that PCC will report, these are all the central controller instructions that you gave me before you went down. Now tell me, what do I need to do? Is there any change? So it's the job of the PCE to maybe use initiate message to remove some, add some, and handle it. So kind of very similar to PC initiated LSP. Just think of if a PC initiated LSPs were sent from a stateful PC to a node, and the session goes down, whatever things that the PCC has to do for PC initiated LSP, the same thing it needs to do for central controller instructions, because at the end, that's what it is. It's just a one-hop LSP, as we were discussing earlier. We have lots of optimizations that we did for LSP state synchronization. All of them RFC 8233, and as well as there is a document that we presented the last time, which is about state synchronization across PCEs. All of them continue to work with PCCC mode as well. So which is a good thing, that we don't need brand new procedure. We can piggyback on things that's already are there. Of course, to support this, we need to do capability advertisement. So we will have a capability TLV, and we follow the same changes that we did to path setup type and make it a sub TLV to the capability TLVs, etc. And SBIT is for PCCC, PCCC SR mode, and the basic is for PCCC. The changes to PCEP message, basically inside your PC initiated message, you added a central control. This central control would have two modes. One is with LSP, which is the basic mode, and one is FEC, which is for the SR mode. And we would have CCI list, especially in case when you need to download multiple labels, you could use the CCI list as well. So this is for initiate message, and this is for report message. The report message helps us both to acknowledge what is the controller asking us to do, as well as during state synchronization when I need to report or what are the set of central controller instructions that I received earlier. So that's why we modify both initiate message and the report message. This is what the CCI object looks like. It has a type 1 for basic MPLS label. and type 2, which matches closely to how the SR SID descriptions that's there in the IGP drafts. So you will see things like MTID, algorithm, and all the flags that are associated with any SR SID. And that's what we have here. But this is a simple case where only we talk in terms of MPLS label. Okay. And this is the FEC object. As we know that the FEC could be for multiple cases, for IPv4 node ID, IPv6 node ID, adjacencies, unnumbered adjacencies, and there are new extensions for path, which Cheng Li will also cover in his talk. So these will all be basically what are the different SR FEC for which I am creating this SID. Okay, so what we have done, if you will do a history, the draft has changed quite a bit based on the comments that Adrian gave, John gave, that try to reuse, which has actually helped us quite a bit. So thank you for that. And now, though we had an implementation on the older versions, and we did work in Hackathon and Bits and Bytes on the older thing, we are now in the process of refining and moving to the new procedures that we have listed out in the documents. We have kept it aligned to what we have in 8283, as well as all the recent work that's been done in PCEP working group. And we hope that this document can quickly be adopted, and this could be a solution for PCCC architecture. Thank you.
So Dhruv, are you asking for both drafts?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll ask for room. Just before I do that, can I just go back to here? So tell me again, what is the S bit?
PCCC SR.
Okay, so if I support PCCC but not SR, then I set that to 0.
Yes.
And if I support PCCC and PCCC SR, I set that to 1.
Yeah.
What if I just support PCCC SR and not?
Do we worry about it? Okay, I think I can handle that. I'll change.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I think this is a historical thing, because the way I had the messages being described in the previous document, you were kind of dependent on those messages to do SR. Now you are not, so I can change this.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're independent.
Yeah.
If unlikely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, and then that brings us to the question. So we have now 2 drafts talking about the PCCC protocol extensions. One for what you might call regular basic mode, one for segment routing mode. So I will ask separately. First, for basic mode, please raise your hand if you have read this draft. All right, that's good. That's about 12 people. So plenty of people have read it. Please raise your hand if you would like to see that adopted into the PC working group. That's about the same. So 12 people, so that's good support. And then the same question for the segment routing draft. Please raise your hand if you have read that. Okay, so it's about 8 people. And please raise your hand if you would like to see that adopted into the PCE working group. It's the same, it's about 8 people. Okay, so it looks like we have some reasonable support within the room. I think we can take that to the list for you. All right. Thanks, Dhruv. So the next presenter is Cheng Li.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Cheng Li from Huawei Beijing. So my topic today is per segment in PCEP. So basically, the motivation is in several use cases such as end-to-end 1+1, like path protection, bidirectional path correlation, or like performance measurement. Like we need the ability to implement paths like identification in SR networks, because especially in SR MPLS networks, the label will be popped up hop by hop. So when the packets reach the egress node, the egress node cannot identify which the path the packet belongs to, right? So we propose the path segment in draft Cheng, Spring MPLS path segment. And also similarly, we propose the SRv6 path ID in SRv6 network. So which defines a path ID to identify an SRv6 path. So for configuring or allocating the path ID to an SR path, so extension in PSEP is needed, right? So basically we make several things such as path ID allocation and conveying it within PSEP, and then the PC controlled ID space advertisement, and where the PCC should inform the PC the ID space that should be controlled by the PC. So based on the path segment, the bidirectional path correlation extension is defined as well. So we propose 3 drafts. The first one is draft Lee's PCE SR path segment, which specifies extension to the PSEP to support path segment identifier allocation between the PSEP speakers. So the second one is the PCE SR bidirectional path. So in this draft, it defines the PSEP extension to grouping 2 reverse unidirectional SR passes into associated bidirectional passes. So the last one is about the mechanism for PCC to inform the PC of the ID space under its control by PSEP. So let's take a look at the first draft. In this draft, we specify a mechanism to carry the SR path identification information in PSEP. So we support multiple models to allocate the path ID. For example, the path ID can be allocated by the ingress PCC itself, and then informed to the PCE. So the PCE should then inform the egress PCC the path identifier information, and then the next one is the PCC could also request the PCE to allocate a path ID. So in this case, the PCE should allocate and inform the assigned path ID to the ingress and the egress PCC using the PSEP messages. And the third one is that the PC can allocate the path ID directly on its own account and inform the ingress and egress PCC. So, and we also plan to add some text to clarify, to describe another mechanism, another mode of allocating the path ID. In this mode, the path ID can be allocated by the egress PCC. So the PC should request the egress PCC to allocate an as a path ID, and then it should inform the ingress and the egress PCC about the path ID allocation. So for supporting the path ID allocation, so we need some capability flags in SRPC capability and SRv6 PC capability TLVs. So we basically define 2 flags. Both the name are the same. We call it path identification bit. So it should be set. It should be set to when we need to require the path ID. We need to support it should be set when the PSEP speaker support which supports the path ID allocation. So for indicating path ID request, a P flag should be added in the RSP object as well. So the P flag must be set in PC request and PC report message when a PCC requests the path ID allocation. So it's similar. So the P flags must be set in the PC report and PC update and PC initiate message when PCE replied to the pass ID allocation requirement. Yep. So for carrying the pass ID information, we create a new TLV called pass ID TLV in the RSP object. So several fields are defined. The first one is IDT, the ID type field, which defines the types of a pass ID. And 0 means Ampere's pass segment, which is a Ampere's label. And 1 means SRv6 pass ID, which defined in the drafts lead spring passive PM for SRv6 and P. So the flags, we currently define 3 flags: L flags for local global bit, C for PCC, PC, and E for egress and ingress. And pass ID field, which carries the value and the pass of the pass ID. So this field, the pass ID type is like indicated by the IDT field, right? So as we introduced before, like the PC should inform the egress, the usage or the information of the pass ID allocation or the binding mapping information. So we extend the procedures of IDJAW PCEP extension, PC control SR, by defining a new like FEC object to inform the pass identification information to the egress PCC. So one or more foreign TLV are divided for like describing the pass ID information, such as a symbolic pass name and RSP identifier and a speaker entity ID TLVs. So the pass ID information can be encoded in this like TLV, so that the PC can inform the egress PCC by the FEC object and also the CCI object. So this is an easy example to illustrate, to introduce the PC allocated pass ID mode on its own code. So as we can see from the picture, so the PC could maybe it can use the PC initiate message to initiate RCP, an RSP or an SR pass with the pass ID allocation by the pass ID TLV within the RSP object, and then the ingress PCC would report the RSP or SR pass installation if it is successful, and it should report to the PC by the PC report message with the D flag is set, right? So after the confirmation, the PC should inform the egress PCC with the PC initiate message carrying the FEC object equals to pass and a corresponding CCI object. So in this way, the egress PCC could understand and learn the mapping information of the pass ID and the detailed pass information. So the second draft is about the bidirectional SR pass association group extension in PCEP. So so for associating two SR passes, this document defined a new association group called the double-side bidirectional SR pass association group. So within this association group, the SR passes information can be described or conveyed by this object. So a number of the double-side bidirectional SR pass association group can take the role of a forward or a reverse SR pass. Yep. And if we need to request bidirectional SR pass computation request, so the B flag in RP and SRP objects must be set. Yep. So for binding these two SR passes, the pass ID TLV in the RSP objects must be carried to identify the SR pass. Yep. So this is the example to describe the PC initiated bidirectional pass. And in this example, we can see that the PC can like use the PC update or PC initiate message to install the bidirectional pass into the ingress and the egress PCC. So, yep. The third draft is about the PC controlled ID space. Since we all know that the ID JAW PCAP extension for PC controller and the SR mode draft specify the procedure of PC protocol extension for using the PC as an central controller in SR networks or the basic mode. Yep. But in these two drafts, they assume that the label range to be used by the PCE is known and set on both PCAP peers. So for solve this problem, we specify the extension to support advertisement of the various ID space such as MPS label and pass ID, SRv6 pass ID space to the PCE, so that the PCE can allocate the pass ID directly and dynamically. Yep. So this is the procedure of how the PCC and the PC exchange the ID, the PC controlled ID space. As we can see from the picture, like we need to include the SRv6 pass ID control space or the label control space, which are defined in this document currently in the open message to inform or exchange each other, like how which range that the PC can be used actively. Yep. So this is the example, the format of the label control space TLV. As we can see that the flags, we only defined on one flag called A flag, means all space flag, all space of the ID space. And we have like several blocks of the ID space that can be used by the PC. So this kind of information can be described by the blocks, which combining of the stars and range information. So this is the format of the label control space TLV, and the SRv6 pass ID space TLV is similar. So thank you. Any comments?
Just answer. So you've presented number of drafts. I'll try to.
Yeah.
So in the bidirectional LSP draft,
okay,
you're only signaling associated LSPs, but not co-routed. Why?
Sorry?
You are not signaling co-routed. So associated means they share head and tail end, but they don't necessarily go over the same nodes. When we did in PLSTP, co-routed seemed to be a very important requirement. Is there a reason you are not?
It's like
co-routed congruent.
Oh, you mean co-router and associated?
Yeah.
Actually, we don't want to mention about what is co-routed or associated. It can be co-routed or it can be associated, whatever.
If you have no means to request it, PC is not going to compute it.
In current version, we did not solve this problem. Maybe it can be solved in the next version about the co-routed like bidirectional pass or the associated. Yep, thank you.
Number two, so you're assuming that every device in the network has PCAP session with PC. So you're flooding, right?
You mean this one?
It's a generic question because as you start assigning pass IDs, which we potentially could use to match SR policies to do some analytical analysis because there's no context. it means that you would have to push this information every device in the network. Is that the intention?
No, I suppose the pulse ID information should be lent by the ingress and the egress router or the PCC only, because the pulse ID should not be like inspected by the middle nodes.
It should. This is how I increase my counters.
Yeah, if you want to make some like middle nodes accounting, it should be, but this would be discussed by the other drafts, like the main idea published, proposed in the spring. Yep.
You're using PC as a message bus. It looks more and more like Kafka than. I mean, you're flooding information that has to be known by every device in the domain. Doing through PC doesn't really scale.
I don't think we need flooding.
So if you want to do counting using Pass ID,
Mhm.
which is the main application,
Mhm.
it has to be known on every device where a packet could potentially traverse through, because it would trigger increase in counter and some reporting back, right? So you wouldn't know in advance where your packet would go to. So meaning you will have to push this information on every device through PSAP session.
For now, we only push the information into the ingress and egress PCC. We don't like consider the information.
But this is a main application. I mean, the beauty of segment routing, we remove the state from the network. The ugly part, we remove the state from the network, right? So
yeah, we
you
can
need to think
discuss
about
this
it.
later. Yep.
Dhruv from Huawei, answering to what Jeff was saying. So I agree that accounting is one of the use case, but in this document, as of now, we are not talking about it.
Yeah.
We are talking about just setting up a bidirectional LSP and noting the path ID allocated either by the ingress or by the PC to the egress. But I agree with you, when we do path accounting by this is a problem that we need to handle.
Yes,
and this is a
exactly.
generic problem for PCCC SR anyway, not just because of path ID. We are in that boat where we are using PSEP as an SBI, where we are talking to all the nodes. So this is something that we need to anyway handle.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So any comments? No, thank you.
The last speaker is Daniele. While we're waiting for Daniele to get to the front, where are the blue sheets? Is anyone sitting on the blue sheets? Has anyone not signed the blue sheets? Please raise your hands. Okay, I think they'll make their way forward, and then you can sign. Thank you. All right, Daniele.
Okay, so this is, I would say, rather than an update, a revival of the draft that we presented a while ago. It was last presented in IETF 98. It talks about PSAP extensions to make to share awareness of the fact that LSPs belong to a virtual network construct. Why this? Because this is, we will see in the next slides, this is something that makes VN operations simpler. How do we do that? The idea is to use the association object. The association object simply takes a number of LSPs and it creates an association between them. We need a new type of association to explicitly say that this association means these LSPs belong to the same virtual network. There are also two new TLVs defined in the draft. One is the virtual network TLV, and another one to carry vendor-specific information. Changes since last version, since it was 4 meetings ago, there are quite a lot of them. Basically, the CTN framework changed a lot, and we tried to reflect the changes here. Also, the association group changed, and we tried to keep the pace of that topic. Basically, we changed the capability advertisement and the procedures for dynamic association. Other things changed. Basically, is the specification of the details for the virtual network TLV and the IANA part, which was a little bit poor in the past. Rationale for doing this work. Why do we need the BN association? As I said, this is needed between the parent and the child PC to share information about the virtual network a given LSP belongs to. Does the child PC need to be aware of this information? Yes, in most cases, it's useful. Why? First of all, the child PC is responsible for pair domain LSPs, and sometimes also the child PC of the ingress domain is responsible for the entire end-to-end path. It is possible that in the same domain controlled by the same child PC, there are several LSPs belonging to the same virtual network and having a different ingress and egress nodes within that domain. So why there is the need to have this information? Optimization. It could be that a request against the LSPs of a virtual network is to, I don't know, share as many resources as possible. So knowing that those LSPs belong to the same virtual network allows to do a path computation which maximizes their usage of the same resources, or we need the diversity, maximizing the diversity, and so on. Second thing is, again, knowing that different LSPs belong to the same virtual network allows for relaxation of constraints. Sometimes it's not possible within the same domain to provide super strict constraints that are requested against the virtual network. The most common is total diversity. It might be possible that there's no way to accommodate such a requirement. Knowing that those LSPs belong to the virtual network, it's possible to relax the constraint against the virtual network and maybe go for partial diversity. I think this is basically a visualization of what I said so far. Probably the only addition is the fact that local policies, which are usually implemented within a single domain or per LSP, can be applied at all the LSPs belonging to the same virtual network. Next steps. Well, the document has been, even if not presented, not discussed recently, has been around for a while. It's pretty stable. I would say that the latest changes significantly improved it. Then there is the question whether, given for granted that this option is useful, which might not be the case, up to you to decide that. There are several ways of implementing it. The usage of the association object seems to be the right approach. And that's it.
Igor Burskin from Huawei. So the question is, I understand what you're saying. It's a good idea, but maybe it could be done in a more generic way. Basically, to say that this is association with a particular mesh of LSPs or set of tunnels, rather than to bind it necessarily to the virtual network. there could be applications wider than virtual network for using meshes of LSPs. For example, I do understand when you do, say, modification and you can do make buffer break for entire mesh, right? So this is a good association to use for resource sharing and things, right? But
well, yes, yours is a good point. I mean, there are different types of association already existing. This is just a new one, which could be specific or generic. I mean, the way the association is defined is already generic, in the sense that you are free to define as many TLVs as you want. So
well, what I'm trying to say is that, say, in tiers, when we are doing T-tunnel modeling, we are considering things like T-tunnel sets, right? So, and we do not envision that this T-tunnel set would be only used, say, for virtual networks.
obviously,
Okay, so obviously all the tunnels that will belong to T-tunnel set will have the association you're talking about.
what I'm saying is that you might need, I don't know, association type 32 is for virtual networks, 33 is for, I don't know, any other type of ways you can associate LSPs.
Right. So I think, Daniel, this is Young. I think Igor is saying that it can be covering more, not just virtual network, but tunnel set. We can define another TLV for tunnel set, and we can broaden it. I think that will satisfy Igor, right?
That was my reply.
Right.
I'm sorry if it wasn't clear.
Okay.
Thanks. So, are you asking Daniele for an adoption at this point?
As usual.
As usual. Okay.
Have you ever seen a presentation not asking for last call for adoption?
I saw one earlier this week. Okay, so I mean, we got some good feedback from Igor, but notwithstanding Igor's feedback, I think this draft's been around for a while. It's not the first time we talked about it. It looks like it solves a necessary part of ACTN, so I'd be fairly comfortable asking the question. Who in the room has read the draft? Good, about 12 people again. And who in the room thinks that this document is a good basis for adoption? Fewer, maybe 10. Okay. So I'd like to keep talking with Igor, for example, to address his comments. If we can do that on the list, that would be good. Meanwhile, I'll talk to my co-chair about doing a poll. All right. And that was the end. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you again in Bangkok.
I think one thing may be useful.